in 5, 4, 3. Okay.
Is it the maid in the scullery with the plunger, the cook in the kitchen with the plum pudding, or the butler in the stairwell with the revolver? Welcome to episode 412 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 20th of July, 2021, and featuring Big Finish's The Chimes of Midnight, an Eighth Doctor adventure, written by Robert Shearman and starring Paul McGann as the Doctor and India Fisher as Charlie Pollard. I am Bill Sylvia, the writer in black, and with me are Randy Ronson McCulloch
I have assistant technical director duties tonight. And
and
yeah,
Thomas
I am
yeah,
so not qualified for this.
and Thomas Fireheart.
Hell finally froze over. I'm here for a big finish story.
Uh, Mad Matt Winchell is out for the night. Hopefully, just regeneration sickness, but I know a member of his family is being tested to see if there's anything more. So, if you're around wood, knock on it. Hopefully, everything is all right. We'll know next week, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, from the three of us, how's everybody's week been?
Not too bad. Trying to think if I did get up to anything. I think I've mostly just been.
I've come to conclude over the past week that I really need to just keep maintaining a steady sleep schedule, which is challenging because my two sleep schedules that my brain wants to go to are either nocturnal, which only works in the summertime, or go to sleep at 9 p.m. and wake up early as fuck, which doesn't work on podcast nights. So neither of my two natural sleep schedules actually work for me. But if I don't maintain a steady sleep schedule, it seems I'm just hunkering and tired all day, nonstop. And that's not good for a variety of reasons.
Hmm.
Okay. Myself, I learned how to make blackened chicken.
Nice. Is
Uh,
that it's not just baking chicken and putting blackened seasoning on it?
no, it's trying to make it with Cajun spices and everything else. And I didn't bake it. I actually grilled it on the stovetop because
Nice.
that's the way I did. I posted the recipe on Facebook and I've been tweaking it a little since then. Today I made blackened chicken sandwiches with lettuce, tomato, uh, baby Swiss cheese, pickle slices, and mayo. And
Nice.
those were like almost jaw stretchers.
What I'd like to learn is how to make jerk chicken.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that and keep it low salt, which is of course, my cooking way. That's a Jamaican style.
Right.
Um, and I've had jerk sauce before,
Hmm.
but I've never found any that I liked that was low enough sodium.
Right.
Um, Anything else interesting go on this week?
Not really. Like I can't really think of anything. I just basically been like working, playing games, watching streamers.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like I've been watching streamers a lot more often.
Mm.
But yeah.
I've been watching the news with all the increased cases of everybody knows what, um,
Hmm.
and going, are we going to have to hole up again? because my gaming groups just got back to meeting socially. It's like I'm seeing people, yay! And now I'm
And
looking at the news going, no.
and unfortunately, this one particularly seems to be the more places that don't care, the more the places that do care are likely to face consequences just because of the variants and such, uh, causing people who would be mostly immune to be at risk of infection.
Yeah.
I know my school has been all set, like, oh yeah, we're mostly vaccinated. We have this testing thing in place for people who aren't vaccinated. We're going to open up at basically half capacity in person in September, half classes online. And it's like, yeah, at the rate the country is going, there's going to be a major outbreak when classes start, and it's all going to be miserable.
Yep.
Mm, yeah. I
Luckily, the
mean,
one rule that they are maintaining strongly is, keep some physical distance in classrooms. But as I've said to other people, I kind of think it should be a crime to be less than 3 feet apart from the closest person when you're in a classroom anyway, regardless of pandemic. So,
Mm.
mm,
But, and then I realized, the Black Plague, bothered the Europe for centuries. We were, kind of arrogant to think it would take us one little year to get over this one.
mm,
I, well, that's the thing. If not for the psychology and sociology of it, it really should have only taken a year. Because
mm,
if everybody who was not in an essential job had properly quarantined for like a month, and everybody who was in an essential job just took every possible precaution, this whole thing would have been gone a year ago.
So, so,
But
mm,
a
so,
combination of arrogance and you can't tell me what to do has caused it to stretch out all this extra time.
mm.
so
Oh,
your way of saying psychology and sociology is just a polite way of saying if it wasn't for the assholes and morons.
Yes. If people could just get an information about this is what you need to do and say, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, it all would be fine. But because
mm,
of a combination of people being complicated and people being assholes, probably more the latter by this point in the pandemic, it would have been gone.
no.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I know
Just a
I,
reminder, if you're new to this podcast, if you're expecting political correctness from me, nah, it's not happening.
The one 100 years ago, the entire second wave was them basically being like, "Oh yeah, we've basically eradicated it already." Everybody went out and partied, and everybody got sick.
Hmm.
So we really
mm,
haven't learned anything in that time.
well, yeah, I
Well,
mean, Australia is sort of doing better-ish, but as I've said before, we also have a much lower population
Hmm.
over a similar sized area. So,
Right.
yeah, but everybody in
It,
Australia lives on the
it's
coasts.
it, it's low enough of a population that apparently they just gave up on naming the states halfway through and just started naming them things like South and West.
um I mean, like, to be fair, Western Australia is like the entire western third of the country. So because there's not much there.
Except for
Like
the coast,
the
where you've
well,
got.
even that, the like the capital, the state capital for there is in like the bottom corner, and then that's basically it. Anything outside of that condensed area is scattered little communities. Like most of that state is not basically nothing. But it's a matter of, because it's so much nothing, that's why it's one big chunk rather than
So
dividing
this
up
is a new one. If any Western Australians want to complain, it's the Australians' fault this time.
small. Well, I mean, the one that usually gets joked about for being worthless the most is South Australia, but ironically, they had the toughest border. So when this shit kicked off, so um, yeah, like Victor, or like I will say, we were kind of handling it better, and then the states with the highest populations decided, oh, you mean it's completely gone? Okay. And now they've been like in and out of lockdown for basically like the past 6 months. And they've gone into another one now. So it's like the state I'm in, which is the redneck state, is like or at least the equivalent of, is the only one that's had very few outbreaks, and even when they have happened, they've been very small. So it's kind of hilarious that my home state is written off as just, oh well, that's where all the fucking idiot rednecks are, and yet we're the ones that have been handling it better.
Yeah, I wish that was true here, but unfortunately, communities like Matt's are too common where it's, oh, no,
Mhm.
no, this won't hit us. It doesn't really exist, or that kind of bullshit.
We also
Mm.
have entire states where the governors are like, well, I'm more likely to get elected if I say that all of the people worrying about the pandemic are just lying for political reasons. So I'm going to lie for political reasons to get elected. And then their populations are big enough to cause these variants, and which I don't think is true of any state in Australia, really. You're probably not going to get many variants and mutations from Australia, but you
Uh,
can probably get quite a few in the U.S. South.
I think we have one.
Not even
Like
just the South, because there's fucking places like Utah.
I mean, the one I'm aware of is the Delta variant,
Yeah,
but I
that's the
forget
big
where
one
that.
because that's the one that people with the vaccine are getting sick from. That's the one I think that kids are getting sick from.
Hmm.
So that is the one that could pretty much start the map over from day one if it gets far enough.
Yeah, I mean, I know
And it's getting
the
far
funny.
enough.
Yeah, the funny thing is here is my generation is being like shat on for like, oh, why aren't you all going out and getting the vaccine? It's like at the moment, I literally can't get it. They won't let me because
Oh wow!
I'm not in the age range to get it at the moment, and the
So
rollout is so
are
slow.
all the
So,
vaccines there being imported, or do you have some? Is there a
we
company
have
really making them?
the yeah the one that we're making is AstraZeneca, which I think only has a 70% success rate,
Yeah, I think
and
it's like the Johnson and Johnson in the States. Yeah.
the only reason we have that is because the prime minister has a buddy who had money in AstraZeneca. So of course we went for
Oh.
that one instead of one of the better ones. I mean,
Mhm.
we do have Pfizer, but yeah, like I don't qualify for either yet because my age range is not being catered to because I don't have
That's why I asked them
medical stuff
if they
essentially.
still haven't gotten down to certain age ranges. I'm guessing that means that you don't have like a big pharmaceutical company that's pumping out these vaccines the way the states does. I don't know.
I mean, probably not.
I mean,
And also,
here we had the frickin' cornucopia. Are you going with Johnson and Johnson? Are you going with Pfizer? Or are you
Right,
going with
right.
the Modesta?
hmm,
Uh,
um,
I might have said that last one wrong because no one I know took that one.
hmm. Yeah, like I know, and I think also with Australia, like yeah, it's like we're being deemed as being like lazy for not getting it. It's like you're not letting us get it, so
mhm.
maybe like fuck off.
Right.
But yeah, it's like um, but also like Australia is just going to be very complacent because it's like, well, it's not as bad here as it is in the US, so who cares? Sort
Right.
of an attitude.
Yeah,
So it's
that
like that
that's
doesn't
that's
help.
that's the attitude that was in Matt's town.
It
Mm.
was a double-edged sword when I was able to get it because on one hand, yes, it was cool that people in their 20s and 30s could get the vaccine so that we could travel for May. But on the downside, the reason that was is because they had enough vaccine ready for all the 40 plus in the state, and then a whole bunch of people, especially in the rural areas, which most of the neighboring counties to me are rural areas, just didn't go and get it. So there was all the vaccine left over. They're like, well, I guess we can open it up to everyone over 18, which means there's probably a lot of unvaccinated people within driving distance of me.
Mm.
Yeah.
I know that the county I live in was damn near 100% vaccinated. But mind
Hmm.
you, the county I live in is the city of Madison and its suburbs. Literally, by this
Hmm.
point, the suburbs take up the whole damn county.
Is not to get us off on another tangent, but is the UW system doing anything to mandate vaccinations?
I haven't heard anything out of UW system recently. I have UW Maine. I think had some kind of screening going on. I don't know if they still are now that step down had occurred. Um, or if they were just discussing a plan um, to have it, announce it next month to have it ready for rollout by September. But I haven't heard much from the UW right now. No, in
That's
fact,
one thing. All of all the other political issues that Ohio has, one thing that they've been on point with is vaccination and testing, especially when it comes to the OU system.
mind you, in my defense, I haven't been particularly paying attention
Mhm.
because I'm not part of the university anymore. I don't really have any friends that are part of the university anymore.
I was mainly asking because I'm sure a large portion of the population going to bars and shit in Madison are from that population.
Yeah, probably.
But we've talked about downer stuff for a bit, and we'll probably move on to tonight's show.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
We've
yeah.
got we've got a birthday. We've got enough. We've got a pinch of news, not quite a dollop, but a pinch. Some geek talk, and of course our summary and review.
All right, so shall we get down to brass tacks?
Yep.
Hmm.
Let me change the. All right, and going. First thing that we have is the birthday of Angus McKay, who played Cardinal Barusa in 1976 as the Deadly Assassin. He would have been 95 but died in 2013 at the age of 86. Um,
I don't
so
know if it's because of which one was I saw first, but I can only ever remember the face of Brusa from the Five Doctors.
I can remember the face of Barusa, but I think I remember the one from the Invasion of Time more
Ah,
because he was more of a player there. He was
Mm.
basically acting president until the Doctor shows up and claims the presidency, and then he's basically functioning as as like vice president. So he
right.
gets, mind you, he's in Deadly Assassin quite a bit, but not as much
Yeah.
as he's in Invasion of Time.
And of course, in the Five Doctors, he's the big bad.
Yeah, and he was also, of course, president in Arc of Infinity, and I barely remember him from that one. All right, so that'll about do it for birthdays. Now I'm going to bring up the one news article that we have, and that is the fact that filming is still going on and has returned to Sully Beach, Wales. Apparently, both Jodie Whittaker and John Bishop were there. And most of the pictures, there are some pics. My apologies to Bill because I told him there wasn't.
Yeah.
Um, were mostly TARDIS pictures being shown on the site. So nothing really newsworthy there. You see the inside of the TARDIS prop from one of these pictures. Apparently, and this is from what I can tell, an old Doctor Who tradition. They store like technical equipment in the TARDIS prop between
Ah,
shots.
So when it comes to these sort of articles, one thing that I've been trying to keep an eye on a lot is I have this suspicion based on how she's been treated over the past two seasons that Mandip Gill is just going to unceremoniously vanish halfway through the season. So I've been trying to keep an eye out and see like how often we see her in these photos.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Apparently, it was just Jodie Whittaker and John Bishop, which means that this is probably, if you're right and she does disappear, that she's done by this point.
So I mean, if, obviously it doesn't confirm anything because they could split up for the episode
Yeah.
as they did several times last season.
Correct.
But it could also mean that that does happen.
And of course, I'm always curious if that spontaneously disappeared means killed,
Okay.
because that would be something I would give. That would give Chibnall more balls than frickin' Moffat. That's for sure.
True.
Hmm. I mean, I feel like I've said it before, but I feel like Chibnall seems like the kind of person who would actually stick to a death rather than doing the cop out stuff.
I do kind of, at least as of the last episode, I get the impression that Yaz is the sort of companion who either she dies or she gets trapped in an alternate universe because otherwise she's not leaving the TARDIS of her own free will.
Yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, she would have had that chance when Graham and Ryan left.
Right. And of course, two episodes ago would have been a perfect what was it? Hand of Fear that Sarah Jane left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It would have been a perfect Hand of Fear moment to just be like, well, they just never see the Doctor again. But once you've introduced her back, then now she has to eventually leave either due to one of those causes or of her own will.
yeah.
Hmm.
They just could have left it after that season ending, and they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, they are still filming. Well, it might be that they're finished filming at this location, but filming is still ongoing. Probably wrap up filming, as everything needs to go to post. And
This
there's
has to be the longest production cycle of a Doctor Who season ever.
and it's the
No,
shortest and it's the
right,
shortest amount of
right.
episodes. But
Yeah, and I mean it's definitely there's definitely a reason for it.
oh
But
yeah,
yeah, not counting seasons where, it just takes them 2 years to write it and then eventually they start filming. But from start of filming to end of filming, this has to be the longest ever thanks to all the lockdowns.
yep,
And of course the fact that they probably can't have all the crew in one place.
yep. Anyway, moving on. Our last piece of news: Big Finish has one new release this week, and that is Dalek Universe 2. With David Tennant, Jane Slavin, and Joe Sims. This is, of course, the continuation of the second, or of the first Dalek Universe story, which I think we reported the release of about 3-4 months ago. That sound about right?
Sounds about right.
Hmm.
And, of course, Nicholas Briggs will, of course, voice all the Daleks, because that's pretty much what he hangs around to do. Anyway, that is all the news we have. So, taking it back to Discord. Talk about Geek Talk.
It looks like we have one thing exactly that I think all three of us have watched.
Yep.
Yep. So, yeah. Marvel Studios, Loki, finished last Wednesday. And I take it we all saw it.
Yep.
What do we all think?
It's kind of funny because at least with the finale at first, I was kind of like, oh, come on, are you kidding? And then I realized, oh, wait, no, I'm actually fine with this. For it to keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Got you. This is the one show that it actually makes sense for them to be announcing a season two.
Yeah.
Yep. Out of all
Um,
the other ones,
alle-
the other ones.
allegedly, the eponymous character will also be appearing in Doctor Strange too.
Yeah, I heard he was cast there first, and there was questions on whether he'd show up in Loki, and he had denied being in Loki, and he did. He lied, but that's not unusual.
Wait, when I said by eponymous character, I mean Loki.
Ah,
So,
I'm sorry. I should have known
I,
that.
I I think you're thinking about the character about the actor
Yeah, yeah.
who was cast for this
I
in
thought when you meant that, the fact
2023.
that we were subtly trying to mention the villain without
Oh,
actually naming the villain.
got you.
Yeah.
Because yeah, Loki is probably going to be in Doctor Strange. I mean, he has a
Yeah.
chance of showing up in just about anything.
But
Although,
the actor I think you're referencing, apparently what happened was he auditioned for this role and for Ant-Man 3 for the two separate characters,
mhm,
and then they liked him for both and said, let's make them variants of the same character.
awesome. So somebody behind the scenes is going, ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
I like it when you have somebody doing that
Hmm.
because it means that they're actually being creative rather than just let's take a look at this old comic. How can we rewrite this?
Hmm.
Because
And
And
I
the
mean, it fits in with the plot as well.
it
If you were going to
does.
do it at all, this was the show to do it with.
Yeah,
the
because
character he's replacing, I think is enough of a deep cut in lore that I don't think anyone is like, oh no, how
Hmm.
could you replace this obscure character with this well-known character? I don't think anyone is saying that.
no,
Hmm.
I'm no, I don't think so. In fact, I can tell you, until I read some back stuff, I didn't know, and I'm going to say the name because you find out within the first 15 minutes of episode one anyway. The TVA. Um,
Hmm.
that I didn't realize that it actually appeared in the comics until
Ah,
I read the backstories, and I'm like, wait a minute, this was actually in the comics? Whoa,
Hmm.
I did not know that. But sure enough, there it was. And so I started to read about that arc, and it's like, wait, that's not the same person. But I don't know who that person is, so I don't care.
right. But in terms of the character they did use, his costume was based on the variant of him that worked with the TVA in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
So even though the creative team are basically like, no, it's not actually that version of the character, it basically kind of is in terms of it's probably as close as the MCU is going to come to having that version of the character.
I
Hmm.
must admit, though, he played that role with such a interesting, an
Oh
interesting.
yes.
Yeah.
It was
I-
like he was almost gleeful, and
It's
fully knowing
it's
that at least one of the two people in front of him were there to kill him.
it's like they put out the casting call like we need somebody who can upstage Tom Hiddleston.
Well, I'm your man. All right, sold. Yeah.
Apparently, this is one of well, possibly the only Disney Plus show up to this point that was actually made better by the pandemic. Because apparently that character was originally only going to appear in a post-credit scene, and a scene earlier on featuring the scene with Tara Strong was apparently going to be the main plot of that episode.
Oh, okay,
Hmm.
yeah. Tara Strong is the voice actress's Miss Minutes, of course.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The little animated clock that has reminded people remarkably of Vault Boy from the Fallout series.
I hadn't seen that comparison, but it makes sense. And yeah, of
I
course,
think it
another
also
one that
has
was
to.
introduced in episode one.
I think it also has to do with the retro tech that the TVA uses,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it looks like 1950s version of the future,
Mhm.
which is
Hmm.
what you see in the Fallout games. And then you have that in that first episode, that little informational video with Miss Minutes, and it is very reminiscent of some of the informational videos that they use with Vault Boy in the Fallout series. And then it just kind of clicks in your head. And I'm like, oh god, this is like trans-dimensional Fallout tech. Yeah.
But yeah, as much as I want to give a deeper reading that would probably involve spoilers, I will just say, at least at the surface level, this has been a really good show. I know at the beginning I was kind of just like, I'm not really that interested in this version of Loki. Why is this worth a show? By the time it got a few episodes in, I was really hooked, and now I'm just like, this has been really great. Especially as a fan of Doctor Who, fan of Rick and Morty. It uses a lot of tropes from those, but in its own way. And it also seems like it just set up the main conflict for all of Phase 4 of the MCU.
Yeah, it is kind of, for those of you that haven't watched it, it is very much the Time Lords of Gallifrey meets the Council of Ricks. For those of you that
Yeah.
watch Rick and Morty, and of course, if you haven't watched Doctor Who, why are you listening to this podcast? And then of course taken with that ironic twist.
Mhm.
I've always just enjoyed on how freaking powerful these people are. Because the Asgardians showed up in the Marvel universe and were like, "Hey, we're super powered." So you've got Loki here trying to flex his muscles and just being taken down like a little shit.
Yeah. Although I will say the one issue I have had with this show is that they sometimes forget that Loki is not Doctor Strange. When he engages in fisticuffs, it doesn't seem like they remember he's a frost giant. I think this mainly happened in episodes 2 and 3.
Yeah, because usually when he's been engaging in fisticuffs, it's been with another Loki.
I was thinking mainly the part when he was either fighting possessed humans or when he was fighting like guards on a train.
Yeah, true. The possessed humans I can let slide. Because, possession sometimes does weird fucked up things. And part of that could be cranking up the boost. The guards on the train, however, there was no excuse because those were humans.
Right.
And Loki should have gone through them like a freight train.
But I mean, as criticisms go, I think that's a relatively minor one given the scope of the show. I know I've seen some people very upset that some of the subtext and some of the tell not show details weren't made more explicit by showing. I'm kind of the mind, this is Disney. They've shown us who they are. They're not going to change it. Not saying that we should be grateful for scraps, but when you're expecting nothing and you get nothing, it's not shocking.
Yeah. I mean, I know I saw I don't, I didn't bother to actually read it, so I don't know how far in, but like I did see something like an article headline where someone who worked on the show was saying they wanted to explore a specific character's backstory, and like the higher ups were basically like, no, we want we want the entire focus to be on Loki.
Is that the one where the second main character was going to get an episode, but somebody in Disney said no?
More than likely, yes.
But I know a lot of people were expecting a certain man-man relationship to happen, and I'm just kind of looking at it like, I see why, for fanfic's sake, you might want that. But if you really thought Disney was going to have a relationship between those two characters, you haven't been paying attention.
The House of the Mouse does a lot of things, but they don't do that.
Mm-hmm. And yes, that's a legit criticism, but that's part of reasonable expectations as well.
Hmm.
I mean that is kind of their version of Meatloaf's "I will do anything for love." I will do anything for ratings, but I won't do that. Yeah. All in all, I did also quite enjoy this. I mean, like I
Hmm.
said, I was in the hospital when I started watching it, and I was expecting I'll watch an episode or two and go to bed. I didn't go to bed until I had watched the first 4 episodes, 3:30 in the morning, and I'm like, okay, god damn it, it's 3 days until the next one. And I watched that with my breakfast on that Wednesday morning. And first thing I did when I got up after last week's podcast, I watched Loki, and I'm like, holy shit.
Hmm.
I had known by that point they were getting renewed for a season 2, so that little ending bit didn't surprise me. It was the rest of the ending. I'm just like, oh shit. This shit
I
just hit
will
the
say,
fan.
I will say, of the three shows, WandaVision is the only one that I would stay up until 3 a.m. waiting for the episode to show up.
Oh no, this one, remember, I watched WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Loki all on the same day.
Right, right.
I started at 7 in the morning with Ant-Man and the Wasp,
Hmm.
and then just kept watching because that was on the 4th of July, and I'm lying in bed in a hospital, not being with a minimal staff because it's a holiday and a Sunday on top of a holiday. So it's like, okay, screw this shit. I'm just going to sit here and watch shows. And so when the end of the day happened, I got down, finished Falcon and Winter Soldier, and it's like, it's 10 p.m. I don't usually go to bed till midnight. So I can watch a couple episodes of Loki, and yeah, I just kept mass watching. I wouldn't it's like I didn't want to stop.
Hmm.
And then it's not like I was waiting up until 3:30. No, it was like the first thing I would do each morning with my breakfast is like, well, I could use some entertainment for my breakfast. It's Wednesday. Let's see if Loki's on the streamer. Yay, it is.
Hmm.
And when I got home, it's like, okay, I just got up. Loki was up here last time. I've got nothing else to do this morning. Loki time. And
By
like I said,
contrast, because of the time difference, I usually have dinner when I'm watching it.
Ah. Oh yeah, so when it airs at 3 a.m. here, midnight California time, that would probably be sometime in the afternoon because you're
Uh, More
you're
like
roughly
early evening.
okay. I know Australia in general is roughly in the 12-hour range ahead of the US, but like the US, Australia has multiple time zones. So I'm never
Yeah.
quite sure exactly for you.
Hmm.
What time is
We
it for you right now?
uh let's see, about 2:06 p.m. on a
That's
Wednesday.
14 hours for me, 15 hours for Randy.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it'd be 5 p.m. your time when new episodes air if all the Disney Plus shows air at the same time, which I think they do.
Hmm. And I think when you guys were not in, because I forget, were you guys in daylight savings when these Marvel shows started?
We've been in daylight savings since
April.
since April.
It's
I couldn't remember if
it
it
was
was
either
March
late
or
March,
April.
early April. It was one of the two.
I know
Since Easter
So,
weekend, we've been in daylight savings.
I know
yeah.
because of the way that things like Microsoft Outlook work or like other scheduling programs, people have been showing up late to meetings because the meeting organizer will say Eastern Standard Time, but it's actually daylight time. So their
Yeah.
computer would be like, oh, Standard Time, GMT -5, and it's actually GMT -4.
Yeah, that
Hmm.
that by the way has been a constant beef in my life. People say Eastern Standard Time or Central Standard Time, And they don't mean standard time. They just mean Eastern time, Central time.
People don't know when it's daylight savings time or not. They just know that on 2 days a year they need to pay attention to it.
Yeah, but I mean, they always refer to it as standard time, whether it's daylight or not.
Right. And I
Mm.
try to be a little more conscientious of it.
And I've actually argued with these people, and it's like, no, they just seem to think standard time means time zone. It's like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Right.
But there's no arguing with some
um,
people.
mm.
Anyway, that is a tangent. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
is there
Anyway,
anything more?
I definitely
Go ahead.
enjoyed the hell out of this. It'll be interesting. I mean, I know a lot of people have been joking that it's like, wow, this is the best season of Doctor Who in years or something. And it's like,
There's some truth in that statement.
To be fair, this is also like, I don't really like to compare that because this is like Marvel with Disney money, not the BBC kind of
right.
throwing,
No.
throwing Doctor Who apart.
It's like Tom Baker trying to compete with Star Wars.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you can even strip down the special effects and everything and look at the writing and say that.
Yeah.
Because writing is writing. It's words on paper. And whether you're working for Disney or you're working for the BBC, I mean, that's what made Doctor Who so attractive in the first place. It wasn't the special effects. I mean, you look at the classic series, we point and laugh sometimes on this podcast. The acting was usually top notch on the BBC.
For the main cast.
For the main cast, yes. There are some
not always the supporting cast.
Not always I will agree with you there. But usually the main cast are some very good actors. Not always famous actors, but actors that can do their chops. But what really appealed to people was the writing, because the writing tended to be smart. At least until the 80s, but, yeah, there was the occasional really dumb one. That holds true for every television series. I mean, look at Star Trek.
It took a nosedive when Robert Holmes died, let's be honest.
Yeah, there were still some good writers. I mean, you had Douglas Adams working for them in the 70s.
Oh, yeah. And I say this as someone who loves the Seventh Doctor, and Robert Holmes never wrote a single Seventh Doctor story, so...
Yeah, it's because he died.
Yeah, he died in the final season of the Sixth Doctor.
And yeah, there's some good, good episodes. And there were many good episodes of Doctor Who that were let down by special effects. Disney, you don't have to worry about the special effects. They're going to be fucking there. They're hiring the best people in the business who know their stuff and basically just being handed, a sack full of money and said, here, do this. Money is no object. Acting. Marvel Studios has a track record of hiring good actors. I mean, look at, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth. All of their main characters have been that, and even most of their secondaries are at least decent. You don't have the problem that Fox did when they were making secondary X-Men, where they were suddenly blocks of wood. Yes, I'm looking at you, Colossus. Not for the Deadpool movies. You were good in the Deadpool movies. It was in the main X-Men movies. There was a problem there. People that were playing characters that did not even know their accents. Yeah. Anyway. I'm digressing down a different tangent and a different thing there. But, they'll get decent actors. They'll get decent special effects. They're getting some of the best directors that are out there right now. So directing's not going to be an issue. So where it all boils down to is the writing. and Disney has been making some very good writing things, and this is the same problem that because Warner Brothers have been doing the same thing. They've been throwing money at the special effects department. They've been hiring decent actors. They've been getting decent directors. It's the writing. Well, actually, that one may be a failure because these directors tend to do the avant-garde version of the characters, and that's where things fall apart.
Mm.
When you're creating a cinematic universe, you do not want a director's version of a character. You
Yeah.
want you want
Well,
that character to look like he's just bursted out of the comics into the movie.
well, that's
And
when they brought in a director that seemed like he was really good for a comic book tone, and then he turned out to be a monster on set.
Talking about Whedon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but mind you, they didn't call Whedon to actually make the movie. They called him to try to fix somebody else's movie. And if
Hmm.
you look at movie history, that's traditionally never worked.
Mhm.
If you look at like Superman 2, where they fired the original director and creator and hired somebody at the last minute to try to fix whatever was running over budget.
I still wonder what the original cut of Solo would have been, but
Yeah, that would have been.
although we're digressing again. So,
But no, no, Marvel has it going on. They're getting creative people. They're getting good. They're getting that. They've had a couple of failures, and by failures I mean not as successful as they had hoped.
mhm.
Not
Mm.
absolutely, lost more money than they've made failures.
Mm.
Just stuff that only did 800 million instead of a billion.
Mhm.
Oh dear lord, that didn't make 200 million as much as we thought. Oh geez, we better go in a different direction.
Whereas I'm pretty sure they've probably been constantly surprised by the decent returns they've been getting from the Ant-Man movies.
Yeah. I mean, if anything seems to be a low point in the MCU to me, it's the Ant-Man movies. I enjoyed the first one. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. And the second one I thought was not as good as the first one. Not to say it wasn't bad, but it was just kind of meh. The only thing I think was worse was Age of Ultron, which I was not fond of in the Avengers series. But um, almost all the other movies have done well. Um,
Hmm.
and every time they do seem to have one of these not successful, they kind of regroup, huddle up, pick it apart, figure out what was wrong, and try to fix it for the next movie. I
Hmm.
mean, where you had Age of Ultron, then right after that you had Guardians of the Galaxy, and that was amazing. So they tend to fix their mistakes, which is a good thing. And that's another failing of Doctor Who, is it doubles down on the same mistakes. Hear that, Shibnall? You're doubling down on the same mistakes.
Right.
Okay. I think we've run Loki into the ground.
Yeah.
He's now lying on the floor going, so we can move on to our episode summary, I believe.
Yep.
And I believe that is you, Bill.
Yes. Let's see
Good
if I
luck
can
trying
do
to
this.
explain this one.
All right. Let's see if I
Uh,
can do this in 5 minutes without it pre-written.
yeah, I'm loading a stopwatch now. Just give me a second. All right. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good luck.
The Doctor and Charlie emerge from the TARDIS into a strange dark place that turns out to be a cupboard. They emerge from the cupboard and find that they're in a sort of time limbo, not entirely unlike the Space Museum, which they have conveniently forgotten about. However, it's a little different because when they experiment a little bit, they find that some things do have some essence of time, and those things almost seem to be mocking them or aware of them in ways that time naturally wouldn't be on its own. Uh, Eventually, this kind of switches track, and they appear to be in regular time again, where there seems to be a killer on the loose, who first kills the maid and then the cook. However, things seem to be weird with this as well because people are acting strangely, and they even forget that the maid ever existed by the time midnight comes around. Once midnight comes, it kind of starts over a whole new loop back at the beginning with the maid dying in a different way. So the Doctor and Charlie are trying to figure out what's going on with this, which eventually results in the staff trying to kill the Doctor. However, once again at midnight, the loop resets again. The Doctor and Charlie, hopefully I might be getting some of these out of order. The Doctor and Charlie try to escape this time loop into TARDIS, but it fails because they are now part of the loop. They end up speaking to what they discover is the essence of the house itself that they are in, which has come alive due to some sort of paradox that has happened. In the meantime, Charlie manages to speak with the maid by entering this limbo space of being dead but not really dead, and discovers that the maid who keeps being the first one killed was actually the cook from her home growing up, and they're seeing different variations of scenes in her life, which has been pretty miserable. And this whole thing has been kicked into motion because she killed herself after Charlie died in the R101, but because of the whole plot starting with the Web of Time, her existence in the same home that Edith the maid had worked in as a child kind of caused her to no longer have killed herself. So the entire situation exists in this fluctuating realm caused by this paradox. Charlie convinces Edith not to kill herself, which seems to set the paradox right, end the whole time loop, and they go off to the next adventure at the end.
All right, you did that in about 3 minutes, 15 seconds, but you cut out a lot.
I cut out a lot that wasn't
had to.
important. Hopefully, I didn't cut out anything important.
Well, you did kind of miss the fact that everybody was when you started everybody was acting weird. You missed the fact that they would change descriptions to match what the Doctor and Charlie were saying.
I did I did leave out that part.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, they suggesting that they were private detectives rather than part of Scotland Yard.
right.
And suddenly and the Doctor mentioning that
'Cause
the
that
typing
only
bar hadn't
happened
been
once, I
invented
think.
yet, and he auto-corrected
Oh
himself.
yeah, yeah.
Which is weird things to do in that situation.
If I had scripted it, I would have explained that I meant things like acting like they were in a murder mystery movie rather than actual people with murders happening around them.
All right. So, let's talk about what we liked about this particular audio. And Bill, you are first.
I think I'm going to say that I liked the cast felt really solid. It was they were memorable characters that I could kind of tell who was who. It wasn't too few to the point where it felt like a lazy bottle, and it wasn't so many that it felt overwhelming. But even if there were more characters, the core ones that we see, so we have the maid, the cook, the butler, the house, the what's the position called? The lady's maid or whatever, and the chauffeur. All of those had memorable character traits. They didn't sound the same as each other. kind of the exact opposite problem. The exact opposite of what I complain about in a lot of classic Who stories when I say that I can't tell the characters apart. I had the exact opposite here. I could easily tell them apart, easily remember details about them, and I liked that.
All right, Thomas.
I guess I liked the fact that ultimately, um, the house coming alive thing is more just like for the sake of having life rather than anything else. Um, rather like it just wants to be alive and it doesn't turn out to be some sort of like, oh, and I'm going to,
Take over the world. Yeah.
yeah, or whatever. It's just like, no, it's just it wants to live, and the doctor is like, no, fuck you. You're ruining all these people's lives. Uh, 'Cause yeah, like it made the sort of villain motivation stand out a lot more.
All right. Um. Okay, for me. Uh. I. Well, Bill took mine. I guess I really did like the Doctor and Charlie in this. I especially like the Doctor's method of adapting to the situation. Oh, we're from Scotland Yard. Okay, I'll just deal with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was fairly decent, and I enjoyed that. Okay, what did we dislike?
So if I'm first, I'm going to go with it's not specific to this story. And I forget if I've talked about this on the podcast or not before. But Charlie's whole plot, which we find out a little bit more about later, but it's odd in that all of this stuff about, oh, she should have died and then she didn't. I feel like that's applicable to any companion that the doctor plucks out of their time stream. I still, after having listened to multiple Charlie stories, and going back over some of them, it still doesn't make sense to me why this specific person, why her death is so important that it breaks the timeline in such a way as to create a paradox of the sort that causes this episode. Uh, it would be like if, they went to some event in Rose's future, and they're like, "Well, you created a paradox because Rose was supposed to be here, and now she's not here, or I don't know. It's weird." And I'm sure there are other companions who would have other people in history that would have died, and the Doctor saved their life, and they don't all create paradoxes either.
Yeah,
Actually, almost every episode, the Doctor saves people's lives.
I
So,
I actually can I go ahead of you, Thomas?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because I want to talk about this. The whole paradox that this causes, not necessarily Charlie's timeline, but the thing that empowers the house,
mhm.
doesn't make any sense. Okay, so the scullery maid slash cook, what was her name?
Edith.
Edith.
Edith. Thank you. I knew it started with E, but I'm terrible with names. Um, Edith heard that Charlie died, killed herself. And so a past version of herself would have seen an alive Charlie, which would have caused her not to kill herself later, existing in a paradox. But one line of, "Oh no, I was there, but I was saved at the last minute by such and such, but nobody else knew about it," fixes the whole damn thing. And no, it doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
It's, because it's not really the fact that she's dead, then alive. No, it's that for whatever reason, it sets her in a state of Schrodinger.
Right.
being both alive and dead. And no, it just no. You don't have a paradox based on quantum uncertainty.
And I guess that only really works if like they went to the future, like attended her funeral or did something in their life that relied on knowing Edith was dead, and then went back in time to after the R101 crashed and prevented her death. That would have created a
That
paradox.
would have been a Father's Day loop. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
But this doesn't really make sense in terms of creating a paradox.
No, not really. Not
Mm.
really. They had to stretch this a bit, and I think they needed to think to review the situation again. Okay,
Mm.
Thomas,
Yeah, that's fair. Like
we're at
if
you.
they had tried if they had tried landing in like 1930 that night, then it would probably make more
Mm.
sense, yeah, but
Or if they
honestly,
had done something to prevent Charlie from leaving,
yeah.
Yeah, that would have broken everything.
that would have broke time like a freaking glass plate dropped off a table.
Hmm.
Mm. Um but yeah, funnily enough, I don't really have anything, and I've listened to this like 3 times, so I would hope that I'd have thought of something by now. So I guess
This is still the only
as
big
like
piece you've listened to, right?
yeah, as a nitpicky thing, I guess, while the house possessing Shaughnessy didn't, like, the voice wasn't like too hammy for me or anything, I almost kind of wished that there was an effect over it,
Like
because it
like a
sounded just like
like
just to make it like even just deeper or something.
some kind of weird
Or
echo
more,
track.
yeah, or just like more gravelly sounding somehow or whatever, because just so like, because otherwise it's just the guy who does Shaughnessy putting on like being more campy.
Yeah, basically the difference, right? He basically ate the scenery when he was the house, and
Yeah, pretty
so
much.
when he was not possessed.
Yeah. And the only reason it's really a nitpick is because this is one of those ones where audio only, it's fine. But if this was on camera, I can just imagine in my head the faces he would have been pulling to make that voice work.
Hmm.
And it's like, it probably would have taken some of the impact out of what they were going for. So it's one of those things where it kind of benefits from being audio.
Okay. So favorite scenes.
Favorite scenes, and that's I think I like the moment where actually no, I'm going to go with the moment where they try to escape in the TARDIS and the doctor goes to do that thing you see in New Who all the time. We're like, okay, here's a mystery, but as soon as we go into TARDIS, we have all this technology and we can fix it immediately. And the time loop is like, no, this isn't it doesn't work that way. You're stuck.
Mm.
You have to actually figure this out. Uh, and I like that. It was like their moment of, oh, is it really going to be this easy? Yes, we're going to make sure it's this easy. And then they open the door. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, that was good. Thomas, your
Yeah.
favorite scene?
Oh. It's a matter of whether I want to go for the one that like hit me in the gut or the one that's funny. Um, eh, I guess just for now, given there's only 3 of us, so I can bring up the other one if I want to, I guess. But for now, I'll just say the the bit where Mary is like, "Oh, Freddie, to be killed by your own Chrysler or Bentley, whichever it was." Just
The
like,
whole running gag, Chrysler or Bentley.
You're
yeah.
right.
It was really kind of one of those things that really made it ring. Okay, this is
And
nowhere near reality.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one where I think it benefited from we never actually see what the car looks like. And
No.
I don't think we even get to hear what its engine sounds like.
Oh no, I could
Nope.
possibly see them do that in the fact that you
Mm.
would see it and it would be a Chrysler and then the doctor would mention it and the next scene it would be a Bentley sitting there. It just would have changed off screen.
Hmm.
But okay, I think my favorite scene was the give me the gun. No, give me the gun. No. Okay, give me the watch.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
literally the duck season, rabbit season, and it
Hmm.
just works.
Yeah. You can't
and
exactly kill me with a watch, can you?
and it's just sitting here going you're sitting here going as your brain tries to just process that the doctor pulled that off and it worked.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's just another example. Okay, this isn't an omnipotent force. This isn't the master. This is something weird that also doesn't know what's going on.
And
Hmm.
using apparently cartoon logic. Okay. Um Least favorite scenes.
So my least favorite scene was the one where the moment it's part of the conversation where the doctor's talking to the house, not the whole conversation, but specifically the part where he is like, you have less right to life than the people here, or you don't deserve life as much as they do, and that's I feel very antithetical to the doctor to me. I get that the point is saying you don't deserve to kill people or to take other people's lives in order to create your own. That part I'm fine with. But the way he said it basically was like, oh yeah, because these are human, they deserve to live. But because you're this new form of life, you don't deserve it. And usually the doctor would at least try. He doesn't always succeed, but he would normally try to find a compromise that everyone would live.
Well,
Often he would
Hmm.
fail because of the situation, but here he's not even saying because of what you're doing, you don't, you deserve to be defeated, or because it's an either or, we have to go with the more lives. He's specifically saying because you weren't basically a natural birth, you don't deserve to live, and that is very
Hmm.
undoctory to me.
um at the same time, I would argue that, I do like his argument that he wasn't true life because he was some kind of vampiric form of life
Yeah.
feeding off the deaths of the others to survive.
Hmm.
Not feeding off life, feeding off their deaths.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like he directly calls the house a parasite.
Mhm.
Um and that it's like, and it, like, there is a point where he does say that he's sorry about it, and I think the idea is a matter of, like, you are like barely life and you'll only exist within this paradox. If I want to fix this paradox, you kind of have to die
Right,
because
and
there's no
that I can get
way.
behind.
Like
Definitely.
like, yeah, and even like at the end it's like, it's her life or mine, and the doctor's like, exactly.
Hmm.
And like, I'm going to choose this woman
Right,
who
and that's the same
can
decision
actually
he
live
would
a
make
full
with
life.
the Ice Warriors or the Centaurans or literally any other, you know,
Mm,
aggressor that he faces. That part I'm perfectly fine with.
yeah. It's like choosing between these people who can actually live full lives
Hmm.
or this entity that can only really exist within this paradox.
All right. How about you, Thomas? Do you have a least favorite scene?
um I guess just the sound effect of it just made it very like, well, this is kind of a bit comedic when it's probably not supposed to be, is um the plunger being pulled off of Edith's
Oh
face.
God, yes. I had
was
forgotten
very
about that until now. That is
because it's
the
just
most
like
cartoonish sound effect. It
it's
sounded
like
it sounded like one of those old 30s or 40s radio dramas, or a sound
mm,
effect they would have used on a Prairie Home Companion. Just
or honestly, like it almost kind of is into Looney Tunes. Someone's got a plunger on their face and they've got to yank it off,
yeah, that's what I
sort
meant
of
by
And
thing.
cartoony.
I mean,
Yeah,
this is especially being an early one. There's a very good chance that this was some sort of like bulk radio sound effect package that they had bought,
Oh no,
probably
which
no,
may
was.
have
no,
included.
no, 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 no. That was somebody visibly doing the effect. It was not made with any kind of
Oh,
sound
okay.
effects things. It was somebody going, it's I can't even do it, but there are sound effects guys that do that noise.
Yeah,
Got you. And this was
so
produced by
Foley.
Jason Haig-Ellery and Kerry Russell. I'm kind of wondering, like knowing the sort of mood that you hear when you get the behind the scenes. That's not on Spotify, but in many other audio dramas we've seen them. They absolutely seem to be the type. They're like, so will we get the right sound effect if we actually stick a plunger on her face? Probably not. What about if we stick a plunger on a basketball? Like that's the sort of process I imagine them going through.
Mm.
Yeah, but no, they didn't even do that. This is just the
Mm.
guy making this like kissing noise, this kissing sucking noise, and then uh, popping his popping a finger in his mouth
Yeah.
to do the effect. I've for those of you that don't know, a Prairie Home Companion is was a public television radio show. I think it still is, but it's not what it used to be. Not since Garrison Keillor retired. But they used to do little radio drama skits. And they had this guy that they had all the sound effects, and it was just like the same kind of stuff you see in playbacks from like the old 30s radio dramas, where, if he had, footsteps running down a corridor, he actually had a pair of shoes that he would have near a microphone and have him, do little running things, or bells to ring for doorbells, that kind of thing.
But that's the sort of thing, like I know in the more recent ones especially, they'll talk about how they literally run in the recording booth to get those sort of sounds now instead.
Yep. So, and this is in these days, this was, Big Finish, this was their 29th audio. So they were still a little
Mm.
small rinky dink production.
Their
Yeah.
29th Doctor Who audio, and they had done a few Bernie Summerfield ones before that. I don't think a ton.
Hmm.
Mm.
But they were still a small, tiny operation.
Yes.
They hadn't quite hit the big time yet that they've hit now, where they're making hundreds of audios a year. I think at this point, Doctor Who was their only range, and they were coming out with one a month.
Hmm.
Mm.
This was even before they split the Eighth Doctor away from the main range.
Yep. So, they were still using those old radio techniques because that was their budget. Nowadays, Big Finish, has almost the same budgetary aspect as the BBC. They can,
Mm.
they don't need the digital effects, but at least their audio effects are up to the BBC standards.
Hmm.
So they use the same audio setup that they do. And hell, they're making audios now from their house, and they just have it run through a post where they probably had a
Mm.
guy doing the effects there while they were recording at this point.
Huh.
But
At the very least, they had. I'm just looking because I decided I wanted to be sure. Apparently, they had maybe started doing stuff outside of Doctor Who by now because apparently between. Oh no! Wait, sorry. This is from 2000. That's from later. Never mind. Because I was looking.
this
Oh,
one
they
I
have
thought
Judd.
this one I thought was from 2002,
Ah,
according to the
I'll
copyright.
check.
2002, yeah.
Ah, okay. Well then, yeah. Because I was gonna say
I,
apparently they they did Judge Dredd stuff between 2002 and 2004.
I
So
I think the Doctor Who monthly range started in 2000.
1999 or 2000, because
maybe
I
yeah.
think the Sirens of Time was
The
1999.
Sirens of Time was. I
Hmm.
don't know if that's considered part of the monthly range or
It is
not.
considered the first one,
Okay,
Ah.
but that might be a retroactive thing.
I think it might be because it was originally a Doctor Who magazine free.
Hmm. Okay, so we're up to my least favorite scene.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think honestly, the whole affair bit between the chauffeur and the lady's maid, and the fact that it never really went anywhere, I think that just kind of bothered me. Because you're almost setting her up to be this, almost this Yandari type. If I can't have you, nobody will kind of thing. And
Mm.
then she proceeds to do absolutely nothing with it. And I'm just like,
Is
and I mean, she even was at that point threatening, what was her name again? The scullery maid?
Edith.
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 Yep, she was just like, and I'll get you, Mrs. Whoever,
The,
and then I'll
the,
get you, Edith. Yeah.
and the only thing that really comes out of that is them being like, we think one of us killed the cook, but we're not sure which one, which of course plays into the whole absurdity of it all. But yeah, it seemed like a bit much of a red herring setup. Like even the guiding consciousness didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah, that seemed to be a bit off. All right. Final thoughts.
Okay. I like the story. I before going back into this, I think I kind of felt this was overrated. Mainly because all of the things we've talked about with the paradox and everything, I think those were the main takeaways because the first time you listen to this, it's really easy, especially if you're listening to it like just binging, as I was binging all of the Eighth Doctor audios one after the other. I'm pretty sure I listened to this while I was walking around Middleton, in between GeekCon days. So, in that context, I listened to this and I was just kind of like, it was okay. Um, and then I was wondering why everyone on the internet was like, "Oh, it's such a great story." Listening to it on its own, intentionally, and also knowing more about the story, um, I think I liked it a lot more. As I mentioned, I really like the characters. The comedy really shone in this listen through. There were definitely nitpicks. It's one of those stories where it's very obvious that Big Finish got its start from fan fiction, uh, and of course the amount they even at this point they were doing more. Well, Doctor Who was off the air, but doing a monthly range is more than almost any era of Doctor Who has ever done.
You know,
Um,
as in a quick aside,
yeah.
I figured when they announced in 2003 that Doctor Who was coming back, I figured that would be an end for Big Finish.
Mm.
That
Mm.
they would have to turn in their Doctor Who license. They wouldn't make any more. And can I just say, nearly 20 years later, how remarkably wrong I was.
Right, right. Well, it does make you wonder, what about the alternate universe where all the Big Finish writers went to work write for the BBC instead,
Hmm. And a few of
Mm.
them did. At
and a
least
few of them
that.
became Dalek operators and Gary Russell in particular, I think was a script editor under RTD as well as being a Dalek operator.
But yeah, I mean, if you remember correctly, the episode Dalek in the first series was
Mm.
based
Written by
off
the same person as
Jubilee
this
and written by
episode,
the
right?
same guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So a few of them did become that, but very few.
Right.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so my overall gist of this in on this second listen through is very positive. I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. It's an enjoyable story. Even Charlie doesn't get as many moments as I think she could, but she still gets moments. The Doctor definitely gets moments, and it's a really interesting experimental story. And I think definitely had a good time listening to it. Um, Now for Thomas, and feel free to take extra time if you want to talk about the experience of your first audio drama being this story in particular, without having
Mm,
listen to Storm Warning or anything like that as well.
mm. Yeah, this was. It's funny because um, a lot of the reason I avoided these was I did not know if I would be able to sit there and listen to these the whole way through without getting distracted. And like during my second listen, I sort of did. Um, but on my first one, I was just like, I decided, okay, I'll just treat it like I do with Critical Role, where even though I'm watching that on YouTube, I'll just play a game that's not story oriented at all, so I can just sort of turn my brain off while I'm playing and focus on what I'm listening to. Um,
I,
and yeah, this was a very interesting experience to finally get around to this. And this did, I mean, it's funny because this is a uh story that like in a YouTube channel I follow did sort of like here's a handful of Big Finish stories to listen to if you're trying to get into it, to see if you'll like it, because it's like these are usually the most well-renowned ones or whatever, or they're good starting points or whatever like that. And yeah, this was like the further along this went, the more I had little sort of oh shit moments, and it was really fun. Like again, there's like the odd moment here and there where it's like, well, that was an odd choice, but other than that, like this was very gripping. And that being said, the thing that I loved about this, and it's kind of funny because Bill had sort of pre-warned me, it's like this fits more as an audio than it would, a classic like classic serial or something. And honestly, that helped. Like the fact that there's a lot more. I mean, I don't know if it's the case normally for Big Finish, but the fact that there was a lot of descriptive worked into the dialogue
I
because I was
yes.
couldn't
almost.
remember if that was the case with this story or not. But
Mm,
the specific remembrance I had and advice I gave is that the Eighth Doctor and Charlie run with that Doctor companion pair was very
mm,
experimental and had a lot of stories like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
and there
like,
are quite a few still to come too.
mm, um, yeah, it was very interesting. And it's so funny because like I feel like I've joked before that like a sort of sci-fi related project that I've had kicking around in my head, I've almost sort of just doing as an audio drama. So you'd think that I would get into listening to some damn audio dramas to like be like, okay, this is what this can be like or whatever. Because my worry was that it was gonna feel like watching a telesnap where I'm like, I don't know what's going on because they're just acting like this is a TV show
No,
with no audio,
I'd like to
like with no
interrupt you
visual, I
here
should
and
say.
say that Big Finish actually does tend to put more description words into all of their
Ah,
audio dramas because they know it's written
mm,
for audio, so they know they have to tell the
yeah,
audience what they're seeing.
I
yeah,
think they sometimes have I think they do sometimes have that situation of, oh, what did you say? You said that, XYZ happened and there's no logical reason I would repeat this to you if it was real life.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some times where it doesn't quite work, and that's obviously a failure by the writing, But
Hmm.
more often than not, you get stuff like this. And there's a few episodes where they make the fact that you can't actually see what's going on work for them.
Yes.
Hmm.
And I think Charlie is just at that right level of ditziness that it feels in character when she describes random things she sees.
Hmm. And yeah, like I feel like maybe there was one moment in this serial where in this audio where Charlie's essentially talking to herself and describing something, and I'm like, that almost seems a bit much, but um, it's like it's fine. And it's generally, I mean, it's either you work it into the dialogue or you put a narration in, and it's like if you want to make it flow more like a Doctor Who story, you're basically just going to have to work it into the dialogue.
Yeah, they do ones
Um,
with narration, but those are actual like those are more like somebody reads the story.
yeah,
So
so more like an audio book.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, this was. I'm glad that essentially on a friggin' whim. I mean, honestly, it seems to have worked out since Matt got sick. Otherwise, it would have just been you two.
yeah, it's been Bill and
Um,
myself before, but it's rare.
hmm, yeah, but now that I've finally popped that cherry, it'll be interesting to see what my thoughts are going forward on other ones.
I do, if you have
And
some free time, I highly recommend listening to at least Storm Warning before we go on, just so you have some
mhm.
clue who the hell Charlie is.
Yeah,
Ah,
Because
yeah.
as I kind of insinuated during today's podcast, the whole paradox of Charlie, the original Impossible Girl story that Moffat sort of ripped off, is kind of an ongoing question, and we skipped a
Mm,
lot of the things where that's less of important to the plot, but
mhm.
especially the ones coming up, I think it's kind of important.
so yeah, you might want
Ah,
to
yeah.
watch that before continuing on to the next one, unless you already have.
Hmm. I haven't yet, but I will. I will give it a go.
And you can
And
And
I
do a
if
review.
know. I mean, I know that someone essentially like told me when I said that Chimes of Midnight was essentially my like dipping my feet into the waters story, that they were like, you're probably better off trying to listen to it the main range, or at least the Eighth Doctor main range stuff, like from the start or in order or something, so it makes a bit more sense. But honestly, as someone delving into what was the 29th story, I honestly wasn't all that lost. I mean, I was very clear to me that okay, there is probably some context I'm missing with Charlie's whole thing, but otherwise I was able to follow it
okay.
fairly okay.
And by the way, I do agree with you. It's good to load up something that stimulates your brain but doesn't focus it. I
Yeah.
usually play Minecraft while I listen to audio dramas because I can just do like
Mm.
stupid mining and not have to worry about anything and just listen to the audio. Or
Mm.
today I baked chicken. I had the audio going in the kitchen while I was making my chicken. So my hands and eyes were busy, but my ears just kept listening to the audio and I didn't lose my place. So,
Mm.
and I have had that issue where if I'm just sitting there listening, my brain wants to go to sleep. Not always. Some of them I'll get wrapped up in it, but others my brain's going
Yeah. I mean, by contrast, I kind of have a similar problem when I'm reading a book. I have to have music playing in the background
When,
so I don't get distracted.
when I worked in a restaurant, most of my audio listening was one, I would listen while I was walking to and from work, and two, when I worked an opening shift and I was alone for 2 hours, while my hands were going through the motion of opening the restaurant, I would be listening to an audio drama.
Hmm.
So yeah, idle work while listening is perfect.
Yeah.
Um, oh, is there anything else you want to say about it, Thomas?
Um I guess as well, it was just nice to. I guess that's actually kind of the hilarious thing that just occurred to me. It's because I have still yet to see the TV movie. This was actually my first foray into Paul McGann's Doctor. So that was also a very interesting experience, and it'll be interesting to hear more of his stuff.
All right. So my thoughts. The acting was good. I especially liked the Doctor and Charlie, and the secondary characters did a great job. Um, the audio effects could use a little bit of a tune-up in a couple of locations. We discussed that. And the writing was good, except for the premise of the whole time loop. And yeah, I liked a lot of what they did with the subtleties. It's just the basic premise hurt my brain. So I think on the whole, I'm probably not going to be as approving as you two. Let's go ahead and see what we think about this. Bill?
So I think I'm going to say 4.5. It's not good enough for a full five, but I'd say it's a pretty solid story overall.
All right, Thomas?
I will say, as almost dead set as I was on a five coming into this, I will agree that the actual uh genesis of moving the plot forward is confusing enough that it brings it down enough to where I'll just agree with Bill and give this a 4.5.
Yep, let me just put a dash in for Matt, who of course is not here. So, is that you browsing around the spreadsheet, Bill?
Oh, I guess I kind of just clicked around because I thought I was gonna have to put the numbers in until I saw you were already doing
Yeah,
it.
do me a favor because I'm on my phone. The
Close.
average
Okay.
the average number for the 3.9 that's up there on the one above it. Click on that, hit copy, and then paste into the rope. Thank you.
Yep.
I actually need to do and paste that for the rest of the season. I just keep forgetting to do it. Anyway, so two 4.5s. I am going to rate it lower and give this a 4.0, which does average us out to a 4.3. That will put us pretty damn high on the rankings. Uh, it'll put us at number 122, excuse me, 124 of 395 things reviewed. I'm doing this on my phone, it takes longer. It is on par with Destiny the Doctor Shockwave, Sixth Doctor The End of the Line, and that's it. It is better than Susan's War Part 3. I do love Sixth Doctor Adventure The Brink of Death, and not as good as Susan's War Part 1 Sphere of Influence, and Big Finish Shada.
And Storm Warning, apparently.
Did I not label that Big Finish?
It's Big Finish, eight Doctor Adventures, Storm Warning. It's 85.
Oh, uh,
Oh, it's
yeah,
just
that.
farther up than you
Oh,
probably
that. Yeah,
scrolled.
that was in the
Probably,
4.4,
yeah.
so I didn't go quite that high. Um, I always look at the point above, the point below.
Mm.
Anyway,
Oh, yeah. I only really brought it up because it was relevant.
yeah. Oh,
Before we go into
before
other
what's in
things,
my brain is completely fried. Sorry, I'm trying to do this, trying to do what I normally do and be tech director, and it kind of
absolutely.
it sucks.
Hmm.
So
I,
yeah.
on the note of Matt not being here, we do have an update. And we are seeing his household has been exposed to COVID. So it's definitely a possibility in this case. We definitely wish him the best and hope that it goes over smoothly and is not one of the worst cases.
Hmm.
Okay.
In the meantime, those listening at home, please let us know in the comments, what did you think of the Chimes of Midnight? Were we too harsh? Were we too positive, or somewhere in between? Also, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to get our YouTube exports every Monday, or follow us on Twitch to get our new streams every Tuesday.
All right. So next week we'll continue traveling with Big Finish's Eighth Doctor and Charlie for a bit. Let's move on to Big Finish Neverland, written by Alan Barnes and starring Paul McGann as the Doctor, India Fisher as Charlie, and featuring Lala Ward as President Romana. We'll see about that next week.
See you
Good
then.
night.